Let's jump to this next story from Timcast.com. Democrats call Supreme Court illegitimate. Urge resistance following abortion decision.
Because they didn't obey.
This is a story from Adrian Norman from Timcast. Rep. Maxine Waters told protesters to hell with the Supreme Court. We will defy them. AOC was yelling illegitimate. And I should say urging resistance? You mean urging insurrection.
Violence.
Yeah. Now, as much as I will jokingly say urging insurrection, and I'm making a point by saying it, I do appreciate that at Timcast.com we don't use that loaded language. But the point I'm making when I say insurrection is these Democrats are coming out right now and saying no to the Supreme Court. And more importantly, and maybe you can comment on this more, Will, the DOJ, Garland, came out and rebuked both the gun decision and Roe v. Wade. When does the DOJ do that?
It doesn't. That's not its job, right? The DOJ
has it ever come out and announced it would defy or is resisting?
I've never seen an DOJ independently make announcements and pronounce on like how how much it disagreed with the Supreme Court decision. Like that's new to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't recall the Trump DOJ under Barr ever doing anything like this. And I think that's because that's the role. I mean, it's supposed to. There's two big reasons. One is that the DOJ is supposed to have this nominal appearance of independence, right? Like they're the enforcers of the laws, the people who make the decision about who to prosecute, who not to prosecute. So like them at least trying to appear unbiased should be important, which is clearly they're just not. And then secondly, they go in front of the Supreme Court regularly. I mean, the U.S. government is routinely a litigant in front of the Supreme Court, defending its own laws, trying to also as amicus, like making statements about other cases that might implicate a federal interest. So there's an importance for the DOJ itself to have a somewhat like good, working relationship with the courts. In fact, like the Solicitor General is often called like the 10th justice because they're so often in front of the court. And the idea that DOJ would jeopardize that by just going, the Attorney General being like, you're all wrong and you're idiots. Like, okay, that actually breaking that relationship. I mean, maybe it's good because you want the government to lose in the Supreme Court a lot, but it's very unique and bizarre.
What you just said there, I'm putting more icing on the cake. Look, I'm not going to stop celebrating. But you made this point, and you're saying that it could be great if the Supreme Court just starts siding against the government more often. In my mind, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I like it.
I'm going to make another cake.
I'm going to
run out of cakes.
I've got a question for everybody. Slippery slope, right? So when we were younger, people would say, well, if you allow gay marriage, then they're going to start trying to groom your kids. Yeah. And if you start to...
Wait, they're doing that.
Yeah.
Everything the Christian right said just turned out to be true, but continue.
So my question is the slippery slope not a fallacy, right? If you look at abortion, they said if you allow abortion, they're going to say, well, now it's no longer just safe, legal, rare. It's now going to be all the way up to 9 months and maybe even a couple of days after or like right after there. So my question,
as
do you think that...
Northam said, make the baby's delivered, made comfortable, and then the mother and the doctor have a conversation.
The conversation is had, right?
I'll tell you, here's the thing. I'll say slippery slope, it's not a fallacy, and it never was.
Nope.
Right?
I don't think, I think the idea that a slippery slope means it implies that you go off the rails, things go out of control, sort of. I view it as degrees, incrementalization.
Yeah.
It's not a fallacy. It's literally just... Once the door is opened on, say, two people can get married, it's none of your business. Then the question is, under that logic, however, you realize that like an adult father could marry his daughter, right? Are you okay with that? Because I think that's kind of over the line. And then they can say, okay, but that one, no. It's like, hold on. If your argument is based on the idea that two consenting adults in the privacy of their own home and however they want to deal with their lives should not be infringed upon, then why would that not open the door to every other circumstance?
So how do we put on the brakes, right? So that's the thing, because initially, like, I think if two men want to get married, they should be free to do that, right? I don't think the state should inhibit it, that behavior. That's my own personal view. But how do you put the brakes on once you've done something like that and you safeguard or protect that it doesn't go off?
There's no brakes.
Yeah, I don't think there are.
Keep your kids off the internet.
For a while. That, my friend, is a 20. 100%.
Pump
Keep
the
your
brakes.
kids off the internet.
Maybe not 24/7, but pump the brakes and supervise if they're going to be there.
Imagine letting your kid watch like Skinamax or like it's unthinkable.
Yeah,
but these days parents are like, I don't think the internet.
I don't think it's even worse than Cinemax ever was.
I don't think the gay marriage thing directly resulted in the grooming of the kids. It seems like it's like a global weird thing. That's not an American ideal.
It's simple.
An internet.
When the Christian right said, if we have gay marriage, the next thing they're going to do is start teaching kids about it in school. And they said, that's ridiculous. If two people are privately living their lives, it's their business. But of course, the logical outcome is, well, kids need to be taught about legal precedent and about adults and how they live, right? Okay, it should be in schools.
Well, yeah,
that's why we don't need government schools.
Well, 100%. But also on top of that, it's like, how could you ever possibly make the argument that society is going to adopt a new value and not pass that value onto its children?
Right.
That's what society does with its values. That's like
so it's
the point. And so to be like, oh no, yeah, we'll legalize gay marriage, but like we're not going to start telling kids about it. We're not going to start teaching kids about being gay, etc. That's just a ridiculous position. I don't know how anyone argued that with a straight face.
So I think one of the next possible changes is the end of gender segregation.
Yeah.
Because under the same arguments made, I was reading about the civil rights stuff and the arguments they made about the end of racial segregation. And the funny thing is, and I'll say this is the argument the left makes. The same arguments made about gender segregation were made for racial segregation. People were arguing that black and white people were fundamentally like very different, that, you know, black people had this thing about them or white people had this thing, so it makes sense to separate. This is the argument, again, I'm saying presented by the left as to why they should end gender segregation. They said under the 1964 Civil Rights Act that says you can't discriminate in public accommodation, they end segregation. But why do we still have gender-based segregation in that case? So that's the point. It's not a slippery slope. It's literally moral logic follows.
So what do you do with gay kids, right? So when I was a child, you know, I have a gay brother. You know, we're kids. We're looking at the Sears magazine, and I'm flipping to the girls section, and he's like flipping to the guys section, and we didn't know what sex was, right? So who talks to them about that, right? Who, you know, without that being considered
your parents
grooming, right? Like parents,
your parents
right?
decide how to address it, and it's
right. But I mean, like,
matter.
you know, if they don't have parents, right? If there's no third party, right? That's like the moral legitimate, you know, person who is supposed to be doing that, whose responsibility is it to explain why this child is feeling the feelings that they're feeling that may not be the same as the rest of the kids in their class? Where does some third party have a moral right to have a conversation with that child about what they're feeling if nobody else does?
If they have no parents, they have a guardian, right?
Right.
Well, there you go.
Okay, so just the guardian.
The guardian, I'd say.
Could they be accused of, you know, grooming if they don't have the proper relationship?
I don't.
Right.
Well, if you are not the guardian or parent of a child, and then you're trying to introduce adult sexual concepts to them, I take issue with that because I don't trust it.
Well, and also, like, it is absolutely the case that parents or guardians can and do groom children.
Right.
But now, but I think we can say, as a blanketed case, people who are not the parent or guardian should not, under any circumstances, be having these conversations with children.
No, there's a circumstance in which the parents agree that they want an educator or someone to talk to their kids about it. So, you know, my attitude with the Florida bill is some of these conversations are outright inappropriate for kids.
Yeah.
If the parents decide my child is old enough to start learning about these things, the parent decide what's best for their kids. If that means they have a third-party educator, I disagree with it, but that's their decision on how they're raising their kids.
So they can take them to a drag queen story hour at the public library if they want to, or maybe a private library if they want to.
Well, the issue I take with drag queen story hour is that drag is a sexualized performance, and that's literal grooming. So let me ask you this in response: do you think a parent should bring their kids to go-go dancer story hour?
No,
and drag queen follows the exact same way.
Right, I don't think they should take them to drag queen story hour, but I mean, there is some kind of a line there where you're saying is, you know, if the parent wants to teach the child about it, let's say the child is gay, you know, and they want to have a conversation with them about it, and they say that the boy wants to dress up like a woman, what is a safe environment that a parent can introduce them to those concepts that wouldn't become grooming? If drag is inherently sexual, right? Well, I mean, but I mean, like, it's a community, right? The gay community is a community, and there's got to be some kind of a safe way for parents to be able to, you know, if a child is asking them, to educate them. I mean, what do? Lock them away in the tower and Rapunzel it down their hair when they're 18 and all of a sudden they can be introduced to that community? Or they're going to go online and they're going to be introduced to that community in a way that might be damaging to them, might be more harmful to them if they can't be introduced away. I don't know, and I'm not advocating for drag queen story hours. We don't know.
I'll tell you.
What's a healthy way to do this?
I don't know the answer. I agree with your with the premise. Kids who are LGBT need a safe environment to talk about and learn about these things. But I will also say that as someone, my family owned a cafe in North Halsted in Chicago, which is Boys Town. It's a gay community, and everything was overtly sexual. The storefronts were sexualized. The products they sold were sexualized. Macaroni and cheese on display in the window was genitals. The mannequins were anatomically correct and performing acts on each other. So that's not a safe place to bring a kid to teach them about how they feel.
And my brother and I have been having these conversations just like in the last few weeks about he is sick and tired of drag queens becoming the avatars for the gay community. Like, why is it that Pride has to be this sexualized event? Why can't it be something that can include conservative gays? Why is it that
it is it's notorious at Pride events. People walk around naked, women topless, and all these things. I would not call that a safe environment for a child to learn about these things.
Correct.
So when you have drag, for instance, you have a lot of people on the left saying it's just dress up, it's costume. It's like, okay, what is a drag performance? A person in a sexualized way acts provocatively and it's accentuating sexual features and accepts money either in the thong or in they rip their clothes off. They had Desmond is Amazing, a little boy ripping his clothes off on stage for tips. That is the same thing as stripping. And they acknowledge this, that drag shows incorporate the crowd giving money to the performer as they do these things. So you say drag, I say go-go dancing or stripping. I don't see it any different. Inappropriate for kids.
There's a new Twitter account called Gays Against Grooming.
That's right. Ariel Scarcella, good.
Oh, I didn't know that was her. Okay, yeah.
But she's involved.
But for every reaction, there's going to be an equal counter reaction. There's going to be conservative gays who are going to come out and they're going to say this. And, people like that should be able to have a seat at the table at the Texas GOP. I know that's been a big question lately. So if we don't encourage the conservative gays to speak out in that community and offer them some kind of a moral support, then they're going to continue to be drowned out by those people who will sexualize children. So how we do that is a challenge, because if you're a conservative, many people in the movement are not going to be in favor of interacting with the gay community at all. This is, again, the state of Texas Republican Party is having this big fight right now over whether or not log cabin Republicans will be included, right? So we need to have allies in that community in order to have inroads with that community. If you really want to protect kids, that's going to have to be a battlefront that we're going to have to participate in.
I disagree on that one. So I think that as soon as, and you were sort of talking about the slippery slope earlier, and societies are going to pass their values on, they're going to pass their values on to their children. And also when you start breaking down taboos, it's not as if the people who want to break down taboos are ever satisfied. They just keep pushing for the next thing. And I think that's sort of always been the agenda behind the sexual revolution, going back to Kinsey and John Money, who I've talked about extensively on the show, and what their goals were. And they quite literally said it. And this is Kinsey, who is called the godfather of the sexual revolution. He is the person who is credited as being the founder of the modern study of sex or sexology. And he openly said that he thinks the only perversion that exists is chastity. In his book, he was complicit in the sexual abuse of children and published data tables in his literature, which basically were obtained through the sexual abuse of children. I won't get into detail on exactly what it was, just because it's graphic and disgusting. But the agenda of this sexual revolution has always been to break down all the cultural taboos. And that's not to say that every single person participating or every single person who is having sex outside of marriage or engaging in homosexual activity wants the movement to reach that final end, but that is its purpose. And we've given it a tremendous amount of momentum as a society. So I don't think the solution to that is for the conservative movement, which needs to stand up to it to say we need to incorporate more behaviors which are just non-traditional sexual activities that we historically viewed as perversions into our own fold to help us make our policies.
But conservatism is a blanket term, and it's an umbrella term that will incorporate many different philosophies. National defense conservatism, social it's not just about social conservatism.
So
there's also fiscal conservative, right? So we're going to have to find some kind of a balance between these three forces.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.